that's something you've forgotten too, Ralph. You seem to have forgotten that I am a woman.
I forgot that you're a woman? How could I? You're always yapping.
Your feet firmly.
Hello, boy.
The winner is Art Carney in...
Thank you, Glenda. Ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Academy.
They made America laugh like no one else. Jackie Gleason as the loudmouth Ralph, Audrey Meadows as his razor-sharp wife Alice, and Art Carney as Ed Norton, the goofy best friend who stole every scene. On screen, they were magic. Off-screen, fans assumed they were family. But after the Honeymooners ended, something strange happened. Art Carney vanished from the picture. No reunions, no tributes, no public words for his co-stars, and most shocking of all, he never spoke to Audrey Meadows again. Not once. Why would a man so central to the show go completely silent? The answer has been buried for decades, until now. When the Honeymooners premiered in 1955, it was an instant sensation. In just 39 classic episodes, it redefined television comedy and became one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time. Audiences across America tuned in weekly to watch the working-class Creightons. Ralph, the bus driver with big dreams, and Alice, his endlessly patient and razor-sharp wife. The couple's loud, fiery arguments were always offset by a sense of deep, unshakable love. Then came Ed Norton, Ralph's quirky, big-hearted best friend from upstairs, played by Art Carney. Norton's deadpan delivery and bizarre mannerisms became the show's comedic secret weapon. He stole scenes with barely a word. Carney's performance earned him an Emmy and made him a household name overnight. The chemistry between him, Jackie Gleason, and Audrey Meadows looked effortless. Viewers assumed they were close, maybe even inseparable, off-screen too. But that assumption could not have been further from the truth. Behind the scenes, things were different. Jackie Gleason was loud, unpredictable, and sometimes temperamental. Audrey Meadows was sharp, confident, and held her own. But Art Carney, he was the quiet one. He kept to himself, rarely mingled on set, and left as soon as the filming ended. He was professional, always hit his marks, and never caused trouble, but he was distant. According to crew members and biographers, Carney and Meadows had little to no personal relationship outside of their scripted scenes. They did not socialize. They were not spotted together at events. And even years later, when television specials and cast reunions rolled around, Art Carney was either absent or completely silent. In interviews, Audrey often praised the show's cast. She talked warmly about Jackie, about the experience, about what it meant to her career. But Carney rarely, if ever, returned the favor. When he spoke about the Honeymooners, it was usually about Jackie, always Jackie. Then came the most telling moment of all. In 1996, when Audrey Meadows passed away, many expected Carney to say something, anything, about the woman he worked with on one of the most iconic shows in television history. But he never did. No quote, no tribute, no acknowledgement. To many fans, it felt like a quiet betrayal. Others brushed it off as just another example of Carney's legendary privacy. But for those paying attention, it raised a much bigger question. Why would someone so tied to a legacy choose silence over sentiment? And as strange as it sounds, the tension may have started long before the Honeymooners ended. Art Carney and Audrey Meadows had one thing in common. They were both professionals. Neither of them caused scenes on set, and both were respected for their work ethic. But professionalism does not always mean friendship. According to various behind-the-scenes reports and interviews with those familiar with the show, the dynamic on the Honeymooners set was more complicated than anyone let on. Jackie Gleason ran the show with an iron grip. He rarely rehearsed, often made last-minute changes to the script, and expected the other actors to keep up. Audrey Meadows adapted quickly. She had a background in live television and could match Gleason's rhythm, and they made America laugh like no one else. Jackie Gleason as a loudmouth Ralph, Audrey Meadows as his razor-sharp wife Alice, and Art Carney as Ed Norton, the goofy best friend who stole every scene. On screen, they were magic. Off screen, fans assumed they were like family. But after the Honeymooners ended, something strange happened. Art Carney vanished. No reunions, no tributes, no word for his co-stars. Most shocking of all, He never spoke to Audrey Meadows again. Not once. Unpredictability was part of the show's charm, but for Art Carney, that environment was overwhelming. Carney suffered from lifelong anxiety and alcoholism, both carefully hidden from the public during the show's heyday. While he never missed a performance, he struggled behind the scenes with the pressure of live taping, Jackie Gleason's demands, and the unpredictability of working on a volatile set. That struggle may have shaped how he interacted, or more precisely, avoided interacting with the people around him, including Audrey. Some sources claim that Meadows' sharp comedic timing occasionally upstaged Carney in rehearsals, leading to subtle competitive friction. Others believe Gleason, who favored control over harmony, intentionally kept the actors somewhat isolated from one another, discouraging them from bonding too closely. It is also worth noting that Meadows was extremely vocal in interviews about her experiences on the show, something Carney never did. In fact, Carney rarely gave interviews at all. When he did, his responses were short, safe, and rarely emotional. He avoided questions about his castmates, and when pressed, he would pivot the conversation back to material or the characters, not the people behind them. This emotional distance created an invisible wall, one that Audrey Meadows may have wanted to cross, but never could. And when the camera stopped rolling and the Honeymooners came to a close, Carney all but vanished. No rap parties, no tearful goodbyes, no promises to keep in touch. He walked away and left that chapter behind. But what happened years later when they had the chance to reunite made things even more puzzling. After the Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason returned to variety shows. Audrey Meadows moved on to film and television. Art Carney disappeared. Not literally, of course. He continued acting and even won an Academy Award in 1975 for Harry and Tonto, a role that proved his depth as a serious performer. But when it came to the Honeymooners, Carney vanished from that world entirely. And it wasn't just a show he left behind. It was the people, too. He was invited to reunions and politely declined. Asked to appear in retrospectives, he refused. When cast members reflected publicly on their time together, Carney's absence loomed large. Even Jackie Gleason, who had his own ego and issues, spoke warmly of Carney in interviews. He called him a genius, a partner, and credited Carney's comedic instincts for much of the show's success. Audrey Meadows, too, praised his timing and subtle brilliance. But Art, he stayed silent. Always gracious, never cruel, but always silent. Why? Some believe Carney struggled with the fame the Honeymooners brought him. He had never chased the spotlight. In fact, during the height of his fame, Carney reportedly dealt with severe anxiety and depression. Fame only amplified it. He once said that the attention made him uneasy, and that he was more comfortable when no one knew his name. This may explain why he distanced himself from the show that made him famous. But what about Audrey? That's where the silence becomes deafening. According to one producer from the Jackie Gleason show, Carney and Meadows did not speak after the series ended. Not during tributes, not at mutual events, not even when both were asked to participate in Honeymooners retrospectives. They declined separately and never appeared together again. When Audrey Meadows passed away in 1996, fans expected at least a brief statement from her former co-star. But Carney, alive and well at the time, said nothing. No message, no acknowledgement, no comment to the press. Was it grief, guilt, or was the distance so great by then that speaking out would have felt disingenuous? To this day, no one knows. But just when it seemed the mystery could not get any deeper, an old interview with Audrey began resurfacing. And what she said may hold the key to the entire puzzle. While Art Carney chose silence, Audrey Meadows occasionally opened up, especially in her later years. She published a memoir titled Love, Alice, in 1994, just 2 years before her passing. In it, she wrote fondly about the Honeymooners, about Jackie Gleason's demanding nature, and about the fast-paced world of live television. But her comments on Art Carney were noticeably limited. She called him brilliant and gentle, yet stopped short of describing any real friendship. And in one lesser-known interview from the early 1990s, when asked directly about her relationship with Carney after the show, she paused, looked down, and gave a carefully measured response. "We worked well together," she said, "but we were different people. I do not think Art was ever truly comfortable around anyone, not even himself. That quiet line struck many as a veiled reference to his inner turmoil, a glimpse behind the curtain of a man who gave everything on screen but kept his heart guarded in real life. Lifelong battles with anxiety, alcoholism, and emotional distance. It was not a jab, it was a reflection. A woman who had worked alongside him for years, sharing the stage, the spotlight, and the grind of weekly television, yet had never truly known him. Even Jackie Gleason, who had butted heads with just about everyone, reportedly remained in closer contact with Audrey Meadows and Carney ever did, and that absence was not lost on her. In another radio interview, Meadows admitted she sometimes wondered if Carney had felt misunderstood or misrepresented, not by the public, but by his own castmates. There was a sadness in his eyes, she said, a kind of longing, but he never let anyone get close enough to ask about it. Fans often assume that iconic casts become families off camera, but The Honeymooners was not that kind of set. There was warmth, yes, and mutual respect, but there was also distance, and Carney seemed to prefer it that way. According to Meadows, rehearsals were efficient, polite, and often followed by everyone going their separate ways. No long dinners, no after parties. We clocked in, we clocked out, she once said. It was magic on screen, but quiet behind the scenes. Meadows also admitted subtly that she and Carney never spoke after the final curtain fell. Not even when Gleason passed away in 1987. Not when the show was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame. Not even when fans began campaigning for a formal reunion. When asked if she ever reached out, she answered, "I thought about it many times." But Art had already left that part of his life behind. And the most heartbreaking part, she seemed to accept it. "You have to understand," she told the interviewer, "Art was a very private man. He needed space. And I do not think he knew how to look back without pain. Pain from what? That is, what fans, and even those closest to the show, never figured out. But there is one clue that adds a new layer to this mystery, one that involves a very public breakdown, and a name that never left Art Carney's lips. In 1961, just a few years after the Honeymooners wrapped, Art Carney suffered what his family later described as an emotional collapse. The public didn't know it at the time. To the outside world, Carney was simply taking a break. But those close to him said he was in a dark place, battling depression, anxiety, and a drinking problem that had begun quietly years earlier. His radiant comedic energy on screen masked an internal struggle that had been building steadily under the surface. Some speculated that the intense pressure of live television and sudden fame triggered it. Others believed it ran deeper. That Carney, the son of a newspaper man from Mount Vernon, New York, was never built for stardom. He was a perfectionist, a deeply sensitive man, and the spotlight never felt safe to him. Even the roar and applause of live audiences reportedly made him feel more exposed and appreciated. One biographer noted that Carney hated conflict. Even on set, he would shut down rather than argue, retreating behind polite smiles and soft chuckles. It's why his comedic timing seemed so effortless. He hid behind the character of Ed Norton. But the more famous Norton became, the more Art Carney disappeared. Friends recalled how, at cast parties or rap celebrations, he would quietly excuse himself early, often leaving before anyone even noticed he was gone. He was married during the Honeymooners run, but his personal life became increasingly turbulent. He and his wife eventually divorced, reconciled, and divorced again. At one point, Carney was so isolated that even his children described him as a ghost in his own home. The pressure of keeping up public appearances, combined with his inner torment, fractured many of his closest relationships. During this time, Carney reportedly cut ties with many former colleagues. While Gleason tried to reach out and Audrey Meadows made appearances at various industry events, Carney stayed away. No red carpets, no reunion specials, no retrospectives. He turned down offers that would have paid him millions, simply because he wanted no part in reliving what he saw as a closed chapter. And when asked why he distanced himself from the Honeymooners, his answer was always vague. "It was a great time," he once said, "but it was only a time. I do not live in the past." But there was one quote, buried in an old radio interview, that hinted at something more personal. When asked if he kept in touch with his old co-stars, Carney replied. Sometimes things end, and you do not realize the chapter is closed until you look back and realize no one turned the page. Cryptic, poetic, and telling. Was it regret? A quiet nod to some unspoken fallout? Or simply the voice of a man who never truly felt connected to the world he helped create? Either way, his silence left a hole in the Honeymooners' legacy, and the next twist in the story only deepened the mystery. Because just before Audrey Meadows passed away, she said one final thing about Art Carney, and it was not what fans expected. In 1996, as Audrey Meadows battled the final stages of lung cancer, she granted one last interview to a close friend and journalist, not for broadcast, but for posterity. She had lived a vibrant life beyond the Honeymooners, becoming a successful banker and advocate for women in business. But inevitably, the conversation turned back to her early television years and to Art Carney. She was visibly frail, her voice quieter than usual, but when asked about Carney, she sat up a little straighter. "I always hoped we would speak again," she said. "Even just once. There was nothing bitter between us. Not really, but sometimes silence is louder than an argument." She paused and added, "I think Art blamed himself for something. I did not know what it was, but I think it hurt him to be near anything that reminded him of who he used to be." It was a strange comment, and it caught the interviewer off guard. When pressed, Audrey simply smiled and said, "People do not leave friendships for no reason, but not all reasons are spoken." And just like that, she let it go. No accusation, no drama, just quiet acceptance of a friendship that never got closure. Some have theorized that the pressures of the show, the relentless schedule, the lack of control Carney had compared to Gleason, wore him down. Others believe there may have been an off-screen disagreement that was never made public. But the truth is, no one knows. Carney himself never addressed it. And when he passed away in 2003, any answers he might have had were buried with him. What remains is a mystery, one that fans have tried to solve for decades. Why did Art Carney, the man who made America laugh week after week, walk away from the Honeymooners family without a word? Was it personal pain, professional frustration, or something deeper? The truth may never be fully known. But the silence between Audrey Meadows and Art Carney became its own kind of story. Not a scandal or betrayal, but of two brilliant performers whose connection ended not with a fight, but with a fading echo. For fans of the Honeymooners, the mystery of Art Carney's silence has lingered like a shadow behind the laughter. We remember him as a lovable sewer worker with a heart of gold, trading jabs and jokes with Jackie Gleason, while Audrey Meadows rolled her eyes in the background. Their chemistry was timeless, their rhythm flawless, and yet, once the curtain fell, it was as if a switch flipped. Art Carney withdrew, not just from the show, but from its people. He never badmouthed anyone. He never aired grievances. But he also never looked back. And maybe that is the most haunting part, because silence leaves room for imagination, for doubt, for wonder. Was Carney haunted by something that happened during the show's production? Did he carry guilt over a moment, a comment, a decision? Or did he simply need distance from a time that brought more pressure than joy? Audrey Meadows never expressed anger, only sadness, a kind of wistful acknowledgement that something precious had been lost. And neither one ever said why. In a world that now thrives on oversharing, the quiet between these two legends stands out even more. It is proof that not every rift is dramatic. Some are subtle, slow, and final. And when it happens between people as iconic and beloved as Carney and Meadows, it feels personal, like we, the audience, were part of that friendship too. They made us laugh. They made us care. And without even knowing it, they left us with one last unscripted mystery. No punchline, no wrap-up, just a question hanging in the air. What really happened when the cameras stopped rolling?